Hello, thank you for being here. Michelle Mead with the Nostalgic Ceramics Studio, and we're back for another video. In this video, we're going to be talking a little bit about throwing, and that's throwing on the pottery wheel. And so we'll be making more in-depth videos on our channel as time progresses. However, today we're just doing a quick walkthrough. So let's get going. Hello, everyone. Before we get started, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the tools that I like to use, mostly. We'll start off with, this is stoneware. This is a stoneware ball of clay. I wedged it. I wedged this probably about 50 times. So all of the air bubbles should be out of it. It's not real soft, but it's also not real firm. So, and you'll learn the clay consistency as you go. It's hard to explain on video, but you know, when I push into it, it indents fairly easily. It's not mushing or squishing, but it's also fairly easy to manipulate. So it's a medium kind of moistness. Okay, so this is a white stoneware. It's the main clay body that I like to use in the studio, and it's been tested pretty extensively. So this is kind of my go-to clay body that I like to use. A needle tool is always a helpful tool in the studio for multiple different tasks. This is a thumb tool, and it has multiple purposes as well. I like to help refine my foot with this tool, but it's also a great tool to lift my bat up out of here, which right now is not lifting up very well because it kind of I kind of left it in there when it was wet, and so the MDF like swelled, so that's why this is like being such a booger to get out. There we go. All right, so this tool again is good for lifting that out, and I also like to use it for my make sure that's on there. I also like using it for, like I said, refining my foot. I'm gonna get a different board here, hang on. Look at that, a brand new one. All right, this is a Studio Pro. It's supposed to be similar to the Wonder Bat system that is no longer made. So I haven't had it for very long, so I can't tell you a whole lot about it. As you can see, I still have a bunch of new bats even. Underneath here is a bat mat. This one is Zion Tools USA. I think you can just get that online. So yeah, Studio Pro bat system. So far, so good. I've only used it about maybe 3 or 4 times, so hopefully that holds out on me. And here we've got 3 different ribs. We've got a wooden rib, a metal rib, and a rubber plastic rib. This is the Mud Tools red rib. It's really flexible. This is the metal rib. It's great for taking slip off the pot. And I use this tool to make the base of my pots real level and nice. So those are the main tools I use. Clearly there's a plethora of other tools that you can get. You know, I like to use this credit card that I've cut off for making galleys, and you know, they have these knife tools that come in handy quite frequently. A holer. You know, one of my favorite tools for making my candle lidded jars is this popsicle stick that I just chopped off. Always got to have popsicle stick around. You know, I use chopsticks, and you can mark them up and you know, do all sorts of stuff with those. You can put a sponge at the end of it to make it, you know, to clean out the bottom of your pot. And then this is a piece of chamois that is really useful for rims. This here is another wooden rib that's really useful for getting that real rounded shape in your bowls. So anyway, these are the main tools that I like to use while I'm throwing. Every potter, you know, as soon as they get into the groove of things, will have their own favorite tools they like to use. So you don't by any means have to use the tools I'm using. These are just the tools I'm using. So, and they are my favorites. So, all right. So, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm gonna dampen my bat a little, just so that the base of the clay sticks to it. And put that down, and I start by slapping center, except for my wheel's not on. Here we go. So the wheel's spinning real slowly here, and the slap center just kind of helps get it in that middle spot quicker. It helps you get it centered faster, I think. This is a cone up. Like I said, this isn't a real in-depth throwing video. I'll make a more in-depth throwing video later on, but this is just the basic overview. And you know, learning the terminology, I guess. This is what they call coning up. And basically we're just squeezing the clay and pulling it up. It helps it get on center, but at the same time it's also wedging the clay, which will get out any air bubbles that were left, if there were any left. To center my ball, I've got the wheel spinning as fast as it will go. And you can cone up and cone down as many times as you like. You don't want to saturate the clay too much, because then it gets what they like to call, it gets tired is the term for it. You don't want your clay to be so saturated with water it can no longer hold itself up. I'm going to cone up one more time, just make sure everything's real nice and centered here. At my base, which it wasn't. I prefer to use slip over water to moisten my clay for several reasons. Slip sticks to the clay better than water. Like that slip isn't going to come off as easy as water. Water would just fly off of there. So that's one reason. The other reason, like I said, is that, you know, I want to be able to play with my clay and get some really great forms. And so I don't want it to get tired. Like I said earlier, I don't want it to get so saturated with water that I can't get those really great forms. So I prefer to use slip. I'll pick the slip up. There is more hand movements to using slip, because you got to clean it off the bat, you got to clean it off your hands. It's not like just dipping a sponge in water and dropping water on. You got to clean it off your hands, you know, put it all over the pot. All that good stuff. So there is more hand movements to using slip. And so it's not for everybody, you know. Some potters, you know, they need to make a lot of pots in a very short period of time. And so they will, you know, try and get their pot made in as few hand movements as possible. And so they basically are just using a sponge that's got water in it, or they're just using their hands. They're not reusing their slip is the point. All right, and I'm pretty happy with that. So that's the disadvantage of using slip, is that there's more hand movements. It takes more time to make your pot. One of the other advantages to it, though, other than you have more working time with your clay, and you can get really great forms because your clay isn't overly saturated. The other benefit to that is that if you're ever going to be working with porcelain, you're gonna want to throw with slip instead of water, because porcelain will warp less if the clay is not saturated. It'll warp less. You'll have more working time. Porcelain is such a finicky clay body. It's best if you don't throw with a lot of water with porcelain. It gets tired really fast. So this is called I don't know what they call that, honestly. I call it digging a hole. So they call this opening the body. So I stuck my finger in and I dug a hole, and then I'm going to take my needle tool and measure how big my base is. And we're at about 1/2 inch, and that's about where I want it, because I trim my pots. And now I'm going to open up the rest of the way, and all I'm doing is running my finger this way and pushing that clay into my hand, which will start to create a wall and will flatten out my base. I'm gonna put some more slip on there because that dried out on me a little bit, and that's why we're getting a little bit of that wobble. So I'm going to clean up that wobble real quick. And then I'm gonna use my wooden tool, like I said, to really level out the base of this pot. Okay, and so I'm pretty happy with how level the base is. I'm gonna put some more slip on the inside and the outside of the pot here, and we're gonna pull our first wall here. We're gonna do our first wall pull, is what I'm trying to say. And basically at this stage, I'm just pushing the clay from on one side into my hand on the other side. I'm not really pulling at that point yet. I'm gonna compress my rim. Flatten out that base again. I kind of dug my finger in there. I'm just picking up slip off the wheel head to put back on my pot. And I'm going to slow the wheel down a little bit to about a medium speed. And I'm going to do the rest of my pulls. Just going to put a few drops of water on. And basically all I'm doing is pinching and pulling. I'm anchored really well to my body, so my arms aren't moving, my hands aren't moving. And there's really nothing that I can say that's going to teach somebody how to pull a wall. Everybody does it differently. Everybody has their own different hand movements they use. And it's something that you have to learn through experience. It's not something that I can give you a formula that's going to make you successful at it. You have to get your hands on the clay, on the wheel. Yeah. There's a few basic things that everybody kind of does, like the obvious stuff like opening the wall, but actually pulling the wall, I mean, that's everybody has to learn how to do that individually. And the amount of water that you use for this, again, is going to be dependent, of the amount of water that you use while learning, again, is going to be dependent on what your end goals are. If it's your goal to make a ton of pottery and to sell a lot of your work and to make, to make pieces over and over again and sell that, then you're probably not going to be, wanting to learn how to throw with slip. You're probably going to be wanting to learn how to throw quickly, efficiently, in as few movements as possible. But if your goal is to work your way up to throwing porcelain, or your goal is to get some really exaggerated forms, you're going to want to learn to throw as dry as possible so that your clay doesn't get too tired. Here, let me fix that real quick and then I'll explain what happened. Okay, so you saw that kind of buckled there at the bottom. At the bottom there, I just got my wall a little bit too thin and it couldn't support the weight at the top. And so I'm fixing that by throwing down instead of throwing up. I'm pushing clay down to thicken out that wall at the base. And again, I can do that because my clay's not too saturated with water. But that's a little bit of an advanced technique there. All right, so now that I put a bunch of clay back at the bottom, I'm gonna pull that back up. Okay, and I'm happy with that. And I'm not going to mess with it anymore because it is getting a little bit saturated. And so I'm going to begin to, right now I'm just cleaning out all the excess lip out of the base of the pot. And then I'm going to start forming it into the shape that I want. These walls are very thin. This is for a custom order for somebody who requested a very, very lightweight mug. And so these walls are incredibly thin. And so I'm just taking my time, pushing to get that form that I'm looking for. You can kind of see my finger poking through there. And that's all I'm doing. On the inside, I'm just pushing my finger into the clay, supporting it on the outside as I do that on the inside. I want to push that rim in a little. All right, I'm pretty pleased with that. So this is the part where I use the metal rib. Here, I stuck my fingernail into the base, so I'm gonna clean that up a little again. This is the part where I use the metal rib to clean off all of the excess slip and refine the shape. And I'm going to use the other side to do the rim. This tool is really good for taking off any excess and doing an undercut at the base. And then I'm going to use that rib again. And then, like I said, I like to use this tool at the foot. So I'm going to put a little slip on there, get it a little damp and slippery. Push that in right there. I'll refine that even further when I trim the foot later. Okay, and so then the last thing left to do is clean up the rim. And here's my leather chamois. This was, we picked this up in the automotive section at our local home goods store. And it's just a car chamois, and you can cut it into pieces and have extra on hand, and you get a little water and a little slip on it, and it does a really nice job of just cleaning up that rim and rounding it off and making it real comfortable to use the form. That's my husband, Kevin, getting a work phone call, I'm assuming. Okay, I'm really happy with that. So I'm done here. So the last thing to do is just wire it off of the bat. These MDF bats are designed so that the pot can dry on them and it'll just pop off at the base. But I don't like doing that because I like to flip the pot over as soon as possible so that it dries evenly, because I trim the foot of my pot, and then also I dry them very slowly so the handles don't crack. So I wire it off, and then this goes into my repurposed freezer that I've turned into a damp box. It's a freezer that doesn't work anymore. So there's the inside of it, side. All right, so that was it. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.